could that answer have gone to a different law firm? Could you have swapped names around and sent the exact same answer out? If you could, you have to redraft. Welcome back to my channel, guys. It's your girl Nadine, and this is Legally Diverse, a platform I've set up to help aspiring solicitors reach their goal as quickly as possible whilst keeping you motivated throughout the process. So today I'm going to be talking about application forms. I'm going to be providing some hints and tips that I found helpful in my vacation scheme and training contract applications. So stay tuned and we'll get straight into the video. So tip number 1, do your research. Do your research. Like, before you draft any answers, before you even open the application form, make sure you do your research. Why? Because you may decide that you actually don't want to work for the firm. You may decide it doesn't fit in with your long-term or short-term goals. So maybe it doesn't fit with what you want out of your career, or it doesn't have the training contract seats you want, or may not be in the locations that you want. So do your research, because it may not be worth drafting an application form at all in the first place. Secondly, you want to do your research because I know there are so many different law firms, especially when most law firms have some type of litigation department, or they have some type of finance, or they do some type of property work. But law firms are different when you look at them more in detail. So in order for you to decide what type of firms are right for you, you may want to start by making a list. Is it important to you that the firm does a lot of pro bono work? Or is it important that the firm is international? Or are you happy with it just having one office? Like, whatever your reasons are, if you have a list, doing your research will be easier because you'll be able to look at the firms and cross-reference that with your list and your metrics. Once you've done your research, it then also becomes a lot easier for you to differentiate between different firms. And being able to compare how firms are different is important when it comes to drafting application answers and when you eventually get to the interview stage, because law firms will want to know why you want them over their competitors. And if you haven't researched the firm enough, you won't be able to do that analysis. I've actually done a post on how to do your research on my Instagram. If you're not following, follow. I'll put the post here. It basically just gives you a list of resources that you can use when conducting your research. And it also provides you with some considerations. So some things that you want to think about and some questions you may want to ask yourself when looking at different firms. So check out my Instagram for some tips on that. Tip number 2, make sure you know the application process and the application deadline. Many law firms have the deadline of the 31st of July, but that deadline can be strict or flexible in the sense that some law firms don't look at any application forms until the 31st of July. However, other law firms may start screening applicants out right from the moment that the application cycle opens, and you don't want to put yourself on the back foot. So, for example, if a law firm has 2,000 applicants for their 30 positions, and they have applicants applying from October, November, December, and you decide to apply the 29th of July, the law firm may be like, does this applicant really want to work for us? Are they really passionate about the work that we do and working at us specifically if they've left it to the last minute? Or similarly, law firms may start screening out people and offering places before the deadline closes. So let's do some maths here. If you do have 2,000 applications, for example, for your 30 positions, and you've already given 19 of those to people who've done VAC schemes, and then you gave another 6 out to people who applied in the earlier months, and you apply last minute, you may then only be fighting for those last 5 remaining positions, and you don't want to give yourself any disadvantage in this process. Caveat, this doesn't apply to all law firms. Some law firms don't make offers until the last minute. Some law firms, like I said, don't screen until the last minute. But unless you do your research and unless you are aware of how law firms recruit, you won't know which of those categories the law firm you're applying to falls into. So make sure you know their deadline, make sure you know if it's rolling, and make a note of it. Because the last thing you want to do is either one, put yourself at a disadvantage, or two, miss a deadline completely. Because once the deadline's gone, it is gone. Tip number 3, make sure your application is tailored to that specific firm. Like, it has to be tailored to that firm. I've been in so many talks with people in graduate recruitment who will often say that they can spot when a candidate has literally written a paragraph to another firm and then changed the name in the firm to their firm and submitted the exact same application form. That they can spot when applicants copy and paste answers. And you definitely don't want to be one of those applicants, because each law firm is so different that one answer for one law firm may not apply to the other. And when a law firm thinks you've copy and pasted, they start to question you again. Do you know what the law firm does? Do you know what's important to them? Do you know what makes them different? And do you actually want to work for them? Or are they one of your many application forms that you're dishing out? Like, yeah, you don't want them to question you at all. So once you've drafted your answer, look back at it and be honest with yourself. Could that answer have gone to a different law firm? Could you have swapped names around and sent the exact same answer out? If you could, you have to redraft. You have to start that answer again, because that means it's just not specific enough. Now, I do have some examples of how you can tailor your application form to a specific law firm. One way you can do that is by using your commercial awareness. Speak about some commercial news stories that are relevant to that firm. So, for example, has there been a recent commercial deal that that law firm has advised on? Or has the law firm spoke in detail about a client that they have on their website? And do you know enough about that client and what's going on with that client and how the law firm can help that client or has helped that client that you can speak about in that question? Use your commercial awareness, 1, to show you're commercially aware, but 2, to show what that law firm is doing in the commercial market, because that's how they make their money. That is what is specific to them. The second way you can tailor your application answer is by talking about an event that you've gone to that that law firm has either put on or been a part of. So, for example, have you attended a virtual open day at the firm? Or have you attended a networking event where you've networked with different lawyers at the firm and you've learned something valuable, which isn't necessarily quickly found on the internet? I can't stress it enough. Make sure it is tailored. Whilst a news story question may be broad, even those type of questions you can't copy and paste across application forms, because one news story may be relevant to one firm but may not be relevant to another. And I'll give you an example. I've had an application question that has said something to the effect of,
give me an example of a recent news story that you've read and why you found it interesting.
Now, obviously, that sounds like a general question. That sounds like a question that wants you to tell them about yourself, tell them what you find interesting. Yes, but no. Let me tell you why. I have a property background, for example, so I regularly keep up to date with residential property news. The recent stamp duty land tax extension was of interest to me, but if I'm applying to a law firm that doesn't do any residential property, the last thing I want to do is talk about SDLT for 250 words in an application form. Like, you just don't do it. Because yes, SDLT would have been a recent news story. Yes, I can talk about it. And yes, I'm interested in it. But if I spend that amount of time talking about my interest in residential property, my knowledge of the area, and they don't do any residential property, they're going to be looking at it like,
does this candidate actually know the work that we do? And if they're so interested in residential property, why are they applying for us?
And you definitely don't want that. Like, you don't want them questioning why you've included a news story that isn't actually relevant to them. Because then they'll go through the rest of your application form with a skeptical eye. So be aware of that. Tip number 4, word limits. Word limits, word limits, word limits. I've had application forms where the word limit is 75 words. And I've also had applications where it's 150 or 250 or 400. Or you get application forms where it's a 1,000 word cover letter. Like, whatever the word limit is, make sure you do not go over. Like, don't go over. Because one, the law firm could just cut it off right at the word limit. And you could have said something so interesting and so important in those final words, and they won't ever be able to see it. But similarly, they could not cut it off, and they could do a check and see that you submitted an answer that is 300 words, when in fact the word limit was 250 words. And it's not a good look. Like, it's not a good look. Because one, it shows that you can't follow instructions. They've said a word limit and you've kind of just ignored it. But secondly, it could show that you don't know how to cut, confine, and make your answer more precise. And brevity is a really important skill for a lawyer. Being able to package things in a concise and clear way is important when you're meeting with clients and have to explain an area of law. Or when you're conducting a piece of research for a partner who wants you to explain an area of law before his upcoming meeting. Like, whatever the situation is, brevity is important. And by not following a word limit, you showed them that you kind of just can't do that. So yeah, make sure you stick to the word limit, because in application forms, any strike against you is a strike too many. And I know it's hard because we're human, and like, as humans, we make mistakes. But when you consider how many application forms they get for how many positions they have, any strike you really don't need. On the other hand though, if the word limit is 250 words, it's probably not okay, in my opinion, for you to submit an answer that is 160 words. Because that means your answer is 90 words less than the guide set. It's very similar to like essays at university, for example. If you have an essay that's 1,000 words, you don't really want to submit an answer that's 750 words, because it probably shows that you didn't really do enough in the application. Like, you could have gone into more detail, you could have done more research, you could have gone in more depth about an area that you're talking about, and you've missed the opportunity to do so. So as well as not going over the word limit, you also don't want to go too under. But you got this. Tip number 5, check your application form before you submit it. Like, check it and check it and check it again. Why? Because precision and attention to detail is so important, and it really does start with your application form. When it got to the latter stage of my application forms, when I was a bit more experienced with the application forms and my do's and my don'ts, I was getting about 3 people to check my application forms. I was getting my parents to check my application forms, I was getting my friend to check my application forms, and then I was checking it again myself. Why? Because like, as humans, we naturally miss things, especially when we spend hours and hours on application form. It can be so easy to miss the smaller details. So getting someone else to check is a really important thing to do. And when they're checking, there's 3 main things you want them to check. Firstly, spelling errors. Make sure there are no spelling errors in your application form. None. Make sure there's no spelling errors. Similarly, you want to make sure there's no grammar errors. Spelling grammar is so important. Like, I've been in talks where the recruiters have actually said that, yeah, we give people like 3 chances, like 3 mistakes. And once they go over that, we just get rid of it. Damn! And I was just like, because imagine you just spend 6 hours doing that application form, including research, and then you do a couple of errors and you don't check it enough times, and they just get rid of it as a result. Like, you definitely don't want to be in that position. Like, don't give the recruiters any reason to stop reading or to get rid of your application form over something that you can easily fix. And thirdly, you want to check your content. Like, check the content that you have included in your question. Make sure you answer the question that is set and not the question that you think it is. And I'll give you an example. I had a question that said something to the effect of,
give me an example of where you worked in a failing team and what you did to make that team a success.
That was the question. However, when I read it, I kind of just saw the word teamwork, and I started to talk about when I'd worked in a team. And I had a really good answer of what I thought the question was, but that wasn't the question. So when I had my friend look over my application form, they were like,
you really haven't answered the question here.
And I'm so glad I got that feedback, because it meant that I could literally scrap my answer and start again. And again, that ties into the whole copy and pasting thing. Don't copy one teamwork answer you've given in one application for a teamwork question in another application, because the questions may be asked differently, but ever so slightly. And if you copy and paste your answers or get into the pattern of copy and pasting answers, you might not see that difference. So yeah, check, spelling, grammar, content. And then finally, tip number 6. This is all about the experience and the skills that you include in your application form. So obviously, when you apply to other jobs or other industries, you will submit a CV. And on that CV, you would have like all of your experience, your education, your skills. You can set out everything that you want to set out relating to how it benefits you in this role. An application form, though, is different to a CV. It's a lot more distinct in that they ask the questions and you have to put all of the experience and skills you have in the questions that they have set if it applies. So I'll give you an example of a question.
What qualities do you think is important for a lawyer?
Now, with a question like that, it's really easy for you to just start talking about skills that you think are important. But really and truly, what you want to do is look at what skills they have already said is important. And you'll know what this is by doing your research. Whilst I may want to talk about communication skills and team working skills and commercial awareness, if on their website they've said that the skills that they think are important for a trainee who's going to qualify as a lawyer, is communication skills, team working skills, innovation skills, attention to detail, then those 4 skills are the skills that you're going to want to cover in the application form. Make sure that the skills that you are talking about is skills that they want to see in their trainees. And that way, you can use the skills that they want to say why you think it's important as a lawyer and how it is that you have demonstrated and built on that skill. Because if I go and talk about commercial awareness, for example, and yes, commercial awareness is very, very important, but if they don't list commercial awareness, then I've missed the opportunity to demonstrate a skill that they have listed, but I haven't then mentioned in my 250 words or my 400 words. So make sure you do your research and you tick off the boxes that they are looking for. So yes, guys, that is it. That is my 6 tips for being successful in your application forms. I really hope you found them helpful. If you did, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to leave a comment below letting me know what tips you found most useful and if there are any tips that you have that you think can help other aspiring solicitors along their journey. So yeah, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, share with your friends, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye bye.